All right, folks, so let's get started here. We are streaming this live on our Facebook as well. So if for any reason you know anybody who is having technical issues and can't get in to the Zoom meeting, have them check out our Facebook page for Mountain Hot Tub. So thank you guys for all filling out the poll. It looks like a lot of you folks, the majority of folks have had your hot tub or your salt system less than 6 months, but it looks like we've also got some hot tub veterans in here. 11 people have had their hot tubs or have owned hot tubs for over 15 years. So that is fantastic. And one of you has had 5 or more hot tubs in the past. So way to go for making hot tubbing important. Again, as you go forward here, if you have questions, my associate Bryn here will be fielding questions with you. We are recording this, so we will try to release the video later if you'd like to watch it again or know somebody who didn't get to attend. So without further ado, let's kind of get into the saltwater class here. I am going to shut my video off for a lot of this so that it's not taking up your screen space here. Okay, so first let's talk about what the saltwater system is and what it is not. The saltwater system for hot spring spas is very much like a cruise control system. The idea here being that, like in your car, you're going to set the speed at which it maintains, but it's going to need you to drive the car. We want people to understand this because it's not a self-driving Tesla. You still have to put some effort into it. And we find that those that are diligent on the small amount of work that it takes tend to have great success with their saltwater system. Saltwater systems do generate a natural chlorine using salt that we put in your hot tub when we fill it. This is important to know because the instructions will talk about maintaining proper chlorine levels and whatnot. We'll get into that a little bit more detail later, kind of where we feel on what your chlorine levels should or shouldn't be. But it's important to just know that that's really what a salt system is. Saltwater systems can definitely allow you to use a lot less manufactured and bottled chemicals in your hot tub. And that's certainly our goal for you. And we find many people who are looking at purchasing a hot tub that want saltwater are looking for the same thing. One of the big benefits of a salt system, though, because we're adding a lot less chemicals, is that we get to refill it about once a year, as opposed to every 3 to 4 months. If you're having to refill with greater frequency because of water issues, hopefully this class will help you prevent that from happening. Salt systems are very nice for your skin. Personally, when I get out of my saltwater hot tub, I don't even feel like I need to rinse off when I get out of the shower. I can dry off, cool down, go straight to bed. Those who have sensitive skin issues, saltwater tends to do really well for them. And last but not least, just less chemical smell. We always tell people, even on a traditionally chlorinated hot tub system, chlorine smell is always a red flag, and that can either mean too little sanitation or too much, but we'll talk about that a little bit as well. As I mentioned, saltwater systems are not an autopilot, so please know that you do have to check in with the hot tub periodically. Because this class is specifically for the new freshwater salt system, which is featured on hot spring tubs from 2019 and newer. The freshwater salt system will ask you to interact with it about every 10 days, and we're going to go over those details as well. Also know that the saltwater system is not an instant solution if you get cloudy water. There may be scenarios where we may actually want to add some bottled chlorine if you get behind and the water needs a little extra TLC. As I mentioned before, because it does generate a natural chlorine, it is technically not chlorine-free, but most people wouldn't even know that after swimming in saltwater pools and spas because it smells so much better, feels so much better on the skin. All right, so let's talk about the keys to success with a salt system. Probably the most important factor is the water hardness. So traditionally, soft water is a no-no in most hot tub brands due to overall water chemistry, quality of materials like heaters and things. In a hot spring spa with a salt system, it's actually paramount that we properly soften the water when you fill the hot tub and when you top it off. With proper hardness levels, we can prevent scale and mineral accumulations in the hot tub, and on the active components of the saltwater system, the cartridge as they refer to it. We'll discuss that a little bit more later. Hot spring spas and the EPA are going to recommend that you ensure a small residual of free chlorine at all times. We'll talk about this a little bit more. The idea here is that because the salt system is creating that natural chlorine sanitizer, if we have a small amount in there at all times, it prevents the water from getting cloudy or odorous or allowing bugs to grow. We do want to test the water once a week, ideally, because we know that your pH balance in the hot tub will require weekly adjustments. We're going to talk about that in greater detail as well later. As part of that, the saltwater system is going to ask you to confirm or adjust the output level setting on the salt system every 10 days. Now that is the cruise control setting that I was referring to earlier. Every 10 days, it's just going to ask you, how am I doing? And you're going to tell the hot tub whether it needs to do a better job or take some time off. The freshwater cartridge referred to at the bottom of the screen here, and the silver ionizing cartridge should be replaced every 3 to 4 months. The silver ionizing cartridge helps with aiding in reducing bacteria growth more naturally. Those last up to 4 months. We'll talk about those later as well. But the freshwater cartridge, which is the functional component of your salt system, they average between 3 to 4 months lifespan. I've seen people go longer, and I've seen people get dramatically shorter lifespans, and we're going to kind of talk about that later and how we can get the most life out of those possible. Okay, so let's talk about when you refill and fill up your hot tub fresh. When we delivered your hot tub new, we will have taken care of a big portion of this. But as mentioned just a moment ago, it's really important that we fill the hot tub using either the water softener in your home if you happen to have one. We sell a product called On The Go. It's a blue cylinder that looks a lot like a scuba diving air tank. This portable softener hooks right to your garden hose and can simply be carried outside, hooked to your hose, and you can fill the hot tub with soft water. If you're not able to utilize one of those, you don't have a softener in the house, they make a product called Vanishing Act. This can be used to remove calcium hardness from the hot tub after it's already been filled. Now, they're a single-time use product. They sell for about $45 each, and they don't soften the water completely. So if you mistakenly fill the hot tub with hard water, your softener doesn't work, whatever the case may be, you're welcome to bring us a sample of water. We can test it in-house, determine how hard your water might be, and then we can determine how many of those Vanishing Act products that you might need in order to properly soften your water. Install a new freshwater cartridge. So when you're refilling the hot tub, it is ideal to replace the saltwater system cartridge, the electrode component, to make sure that you're getting the best sanitation from your salt system as possible. Now, because these cartridges have a lifespan that varies a little bit, you don't necessarily have to replace this every time you refill. The hot tub will generally tell you when the life of this cartridge has expired. We'll get into that a little bit more as well. We do recommend the silver ionizing cartridge be replaced each time you refill. However, these cartridges dissolve ionized silver into the water. And so at some point, the cartridge itself becomes empty and inert. And so when you drain the hot tub, whatever silver content was left disappears. And so we have to replace that cartridge at each refill, or you get no effect from the empty cartridge at all. First step, once you get everything filled up and running, test your pH and alkalinity. Check that water hardness to make sure we've got it properly softened. pH balance affects pretty much everything in the hot tub. We're going to talk about that in pretty good detail later. But the better we get it balanced, the easier life is going to be with maintaining the hot tub. Initially, we do want to add anywhere from 1 to 2 tablespoons of chlorine to establish an initial sanitizer residual in the hot tub. Which dose you add is going to be dependent on how large your hot tub is, but we know that your source water is not going to be completely pure, and so we want to sanitize any contaminants that may be in your city source water or your well water. Based on your hot tub model, once you get everything balanced, we're going to add an appropriate amount of salt. When you buy a bag of the hot spring salt from us, it will have a chart on the back that'll tell you how many cups of salt to add based on the gallon capacity of your hot tub. If for some reason you're not sure, the saltwater system owner's manual will give you indication there, and you can certainly call us or stop by and chat with us in person there as well. Okay, moving on here. So this is actually going to show you the range of the output settings or the level settings on the saltwater system. With the saltwater system, I would really say 80 to 90% of the care of the system is really this single chart here. When you go into your saltwater menu, there is an output or level number that ranges anywhere from 0 to 10. This is that cruise control we were talking about. And every 10 days, it's going to ask you to determine whether this number is set appropriate for your usage. To kind of give you a synopsis here, if you set the output at 0, you'll see on the top left of the chart there, that turns the salt system off entirely. So if for some reason you have an excess of chlorine in the water and we need to stop production temporarily, you can put that output setting at 0. If we set it at the maximum of 10, essentially that saltwater system is going to be running just about 24 hours a day. That's where you're going to be if you have a large hot tub and none of the kids are allowed to go to school because of COVID social distancing, and they're in the hot tub 3 and 4 times a day, and you're just trying to keep up with a really heavy bather load. According to Hot Springs, the average is going to be somewhere between a 4 to a 7. I find with my own personal hot tub, depending on the time of the year, sometimes I'm at a 7 for my output if we're using it a lot, and sometimes I'll be at like a 3 or 4. So as your usage pattern changes, so should that number. Please also keep in mind this output number does not equate to the number of people using it or how often. It simply changes the number of hours per day that the salt system is actively purifying your water. And so determining where to set this number is a little bit of trial and error as you first get your saltwater system, because we've got to figure out what your routine usage pattern looks like. I might have mine at a 7, but you might have more people using yours than I do. And so you might be at an 8, for example. So based on how your water looks, feels, smells, and how much chlorine we're reading in the water, we may need to adjust that. So recommendations where to start. So again, our experience for most customers has been that they'll typically set between a 5, 6, or 7. Here in our showroom, we keep our showroom hot tubs at an output of 1 or 2, depending on the size of the hot tub. This would essentially be your vacation mode setting. If the hot tub's getting no use at all, this is just kind of a little bit of effort to sanitize the water once a day. Those with really heavy bather loads may find themselves at an 8, 9, or a 10. So typically what I recommend for customers to help figure out, how do I even know what number works for me? One, we're going to have you put a test strip in to determine, is there a free residual level of chlorine or not? I'm actually not so much worried about whether the test strip shows chlorine all the time. In fact, really what we're looking for is whether the water looks good, feels good, and smells good all the time. If every day your hot tub looks like the day you filled it, then we're probably doing something good. The way I operate my hot tub is at what I call a net 0. So I will adjust the output setting to the point where my water stays beautiful all the time, and yet I have very little, if any, chlorine residual showing on my test strips. And the goal here is that the salt system is producing the same amount of natural chlorine that I'm using by soaking in the hot tub, so that I effectively stay at a net 0. Now that can be a little bit of a tightrope walk if your usage pattern is very sporadic. So that may be something that you might want to tweak on your own if you want to set the number just a little bit higher so you do get a residual. Also keep in mind that if you have family or friend who has a similar saltwater system, your output setting number is not necessarily going to match theirs. So a lot of people get online and read different things and, oh, this guy says he keeps it at a 5 all the time and it works fine for him, but I'm at a 7 and it's still not keeping up. Just know that those numbers are very, very dependent on your usage, not only how many people or how many times per day, but also how long you're in there. I might soak for 20 minutes. You might be in there for 2 hours. Believe it or not, people do soak that long.
Question of where do you adjust this output setting, just in the settings?
Yeah. So Bryn, just let me know somebody had a question on where to adjust that setting. We're actually going to go over that in some pictures here in just a moment. The screen you're seeing right now shows, depending on which model hot tub you have, the picture on the left there will be on the Hot Spring Limelight Collection hot tubs, and the picture on the right will be those of you who have the touchscreen wireless control. So let's kind of go over this. This is what you're going to see every 10 days when the hot tub asks you to test the water and determine whether that level or output setting is appropriate for your usage level. This is also a really good reminder to do your weekly pH test, to adjust your pH as needed. You will find in hot tubs in general, but especially with saltwater hot tubs, the pH level is going to trend to drift upwards. Don't let it frustrate you when your pH is high every single time you put a test strip in. The reality is that simply running the jets in your hot tub will elevate pH. And the chemistry behind how the saltwater system purifies the water actually causes the pH to go up as well. So when you test your pH, bear in mind that a high pH is actually a good sign because it means your saltwater system is working. So don't let it frustrate you. Also really important for people to know that when you're adjusting that pH, it's commonplace for people to get frustrated. My pH is never right. It's always high. I'm just going to quit testing. That's when we tend to run into difficulties with water care for folks. So just know that we expect it to be high, and it's just kind of a routine thing that you may need to add some pH reducer to it. We'll get into that a little bit more. Please note, however, on the touchscreen image here in the top right, your control is a little bit different than the push button interface. So on the right side there is a number 3. And let me see if I can find here. Right here. So this number 3, that is the output or level setting indicator on that control. Simply by pressing this will adjust that number. So each time I press it, it'll go from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. When it gets to 10, if I press it again, it'll drop down to 0. Don't leave it there because, again, that turns the system off. When I press it again, it'll go to 1, 2, 3, and so on. If I am ready to test and confirm that that output is right, I can simply press this OK button, and it'll ask me again 10 days later. If you happen to be climbing in the hot tub right that moment and you're not going to test the water and adjust it right that moment, you can simply hit the later button and it'll wait 3 days and ask you again. Now, for those of us with the push button screen, you'll see right here, there's an up and a down arrow. Right about here and here are 2 buttons that correspond to the up and down. So you can simply increase or decrease the output setting number right there. Let's see here. If you do not answer this question, let's say, for example, it pops up and says, hey, test the water, tell me if I'm doing a good job. It'll do that every 10 days. If you reach the 15-day mark, the hot tub will reduce your output setting. Let's say that you had this at a 10. It's going to reduce it down to a 2 automatically. If you hit the 20-day mark without answering its question, then it's going to drop your output to a 1 automatically. I know that's a terrible looking 1. I apologize. I'm using a mouse. It's important to know because if for some reason you come out to your hot tub and you find that your output is at 1 and you didn't set it there, it could simply mean that you haven't interacted with that salt system for 20 days.
Do you go over where the freshwater and silver ionized cartridges are located?
Yep. Yeah, so the question was, are we going to go over where the saltwater cartridge is located, the silver cartridge? So we'll get into that here in a little bit. Okay, I want to talk about the boost feature. This is on the push button controls labeled with the word boost. Those of you with the touch screen, we'll look at some pictures a little bit later, but it will actually have what looks like a water droplet with jets shooting out the bottom of it. Looks kind of like a water drop rocket ship. The boost feature allows you to preemptively increase your chlorine production. So let's say that you're going to have the Super Bowl party at your house this year, for example, which you're probably not with social distancing guidelines. But historically, let's say you're doing that. You know that you're going to have a heavier than normal bather load in your hot tub. And so what you can do is activate this boost setting. And what it's going to do is temporarily activate your spa's saltwater cartridge for the next 24 hours. Now, if you have your output at 5, it's going to pretend that it's at a 10 for 24 hours in order to generate more chlorine than you would normally do. Now, it's important to understand that this is a preemptive and not a reactive system. Because a saltwater system is a continual system, it's a gradual production of chlorine. If you have a large bather load in the hot tub, and you need to compensate for that, it may be better to actually add chlorine physically to the hot tub in order to make up for that rather than using that boost function. The boost works really well preemptively, but not as well reactively, if that makes sense. So just know that the boost feature is not an instant sanitizer, whereas adding bottled chlorine is. All right, this is the cartridge. When we refer to the saltwater cartridge or the freshwater cartridge, this is what it actually looks like. Now you'll see here on the screen, this little cap. Now, where on your hot tub this is located varies based on the model, but there'll be this kind of nondescript gray cap along the top edge of your spa. That cap simply twists and comes right off. You just twist it like 1/8 of a turn and it lifts straight up. It's not completely screwed on. And beneath it will be this T-handle shaped device right here. There's a button on the very top of this that you depress, and that will allow you to pull the cartridge right out of the hot tub. When we talk about replacing that saltwater cartridge, the freshwater cartridge, every 3 to 4 months, this is exactly what we're talking about. Now, ideally, this portion right here, these two metal electrode plates, ideally we want these to remain the color that you see here on the screen. If you have hard water, if you have a phosphate problem, which we'll talk about a little bit later, you can get accumulations on these metal plates that will reduce or prevent conductivity between these plates. That's where all the magic happens to generate your natural chlorine with the salt system. So really important that this cartridge stays clean through proper water chemistry. There isn't always a way to look at this cartridge and determine if it's good or bad. The hot tub tests it electronically several times a day. So the control on the hot tub will tell you if something is not working here. But inserting it and taking it out is a pretty simple procedure that we'll go over here as well. Okay, so this is kind of what the screen is going to look like depending on your control when the hot tub wants you to replace the cartridge. Now there's two different screens that you'll potentially see. This is the most common one, and it simply says, it's been 4 months since you replaced the cartridge. Do you want to go ahead and change it now? Now, those of you with the touch screen, there's a later button. If you press that, it'll wait 7 days and ask you again. This button right here, that's your yes, I want to change it now. Simply by pressing that button, it'll then walk you through the steps on how to replace it. Those with the push button, there's a now with a button right beside it and a later with a button right beside that. Now, If we follow the procedure on the controls, it will reset this 4-month timer so that the hot tub knows when to remind us to do it. If you reach this 4-month mark and the salt system is functioning properly and it is not having any issues or giving any other error messages, there's nothing wrong with hitting the later button and continuing to use that cartridge until it really needs to be replaced. So this screen here is going to walk us through on the touch screen the procedure on how to replace the cartridge. It looks a little bit different on the push button interface, but it's the same procedure. So again, we have here, it's telling us it's been 4 months. Do we want to replace it? In this case, we're going to say yes. We're going to press the replacement button here. When we do that, the hot tub then is going to ask us once again, are you sure you want to do it? We're either going to hit back for no or okay for yes. Then what it's going to do is it's going to instruct us that it's turning off the pumps. Now, your hot tub has a very small silent pump that's running in your hot tub 24 hours a day that you don't even hear. If that pump is running while we take the cartridge out, the water flowing over that cartridge may drain out of the hot tub. So it's important that we allow the hot tub to turn the pump off and then remove the cartridge first. Once the hot tub detects that that cartridge is removed, it will then show us this screen. On the touchscreen interface, it's going to give you words that say that you can now remove the cartridge. Once you remove that cartridge, it will then detect the cartridge is missing, and it'll move us to step 4 here, where it's going to show us that it's now safe to insert the new one. On the touchscreen, again, it'll just be words, and it will say that you can insert the new cartridge. Once it detects that that cartridge has been installed, it's going to ask you if you want to restart the salt system, turn the pumps back on, simply hit the OK button, and it will go to step 6. It'll actually start the circulation pump back up, and the hot tub will go back to normal function. So that procedure is pretty easy, although there's 7 different pictures here. It's probably maybe a 20-second process. It's really easy to do. If for any reason you're uncomfortable with this, if you stop into our showroom at any point, any of our staff can show you how to do it. Again, this was designed to be replaceable by you, the customer. So it's really, really simple to do. No service call or anything required. This is that same interaction on the touchscreen control. So you can see here, it just simply says turning off pumps, remove the cartridge now, insert the new cartridge. So it just doesn't have the pretty pictures, but it's the same process. Okay, now let's talk about that silver cartridge and where it goes. Now, depending on which model you have, your filter compartment may look different from what's on the screen here. Those of you who have the touchscreen control, this is exactly what your filters look like. When you remove these screw top caps from your filters, those are just unscrewed by hand. Those of you with the touchscreen controls will have anywhere from 3 to 5 filters. Those of you with the push button controls will have 2 filters in your hot tub. If you pay close of attention though, the caps on these will all be white, except one will be this gray color, like this silver cartridge here. The filter that has the gray cap, the tube that filter sits on will also be hollow. And it's designed to be the exact size of this cartridge so that you can insert that cartridge directly into that filter standpipe, as we refer to it. Now, I am going to point out here that this picture is, although it's a stock photo, is not appropriate. You'll notice on this cartridge, there's this little hoop right here. That should actually point down. So I'm a little disappointed that whoever made this stock picture got that wrong. The cartridge should actually have a little T-shaped handle on the top that you just attach yourself. It just friction fits, so that when you drop it in, you can use that T-shaped handle to actually pull it out of the filter. Again, this cartridge lasts up to 4 months. So if you don't refill the hot tub before that 4 months, that silver content will dissolve into the hot tub and help reduce the rate at which bacteria grows. Okay, let's see. This is the interface for the saltwater system on the touchscreen. So somebody asked earlier if we talk about how to get to the setting to change the output number. So let's kind of go over that. On the touchscreen control, I'm not sure if I have the main menu picture on here. There will be a water drop icon on the bottom of your control that looks like that. That's a really terrible water drop. It'll be pretty clear on your control though. If you simply press that water drop icon, that will take you to this menu. On the left here, you're going to see this big circle with an OK in the middle of it. That is your status indicator. So this is giving you a visual idea on how healthy that electrode, that saltwater cartridge is. So not the silver cartridge inside the filter, but this guy right here. The hot tub several times a day is going to test itself to see how conductive is it functioning right? And then it's going to point to an area generally within this kind of green range, whether it's here on the low side, on the high side, or kind of in the middle isn't really super important as long as it's reading in that green range. Know that that is going to move different times of the day. So it might be pointing here right now. 3 hours later, it might be pointing right here, and that's absolutely okay. If you experience any cases where the arrow is pointing into the red zones down here, that will be accompanied by an error message that will populate right up here on the screen, and it will tell you that it is having a low reading and that the salt system is offline. That is something that we do want to troubleshoot. We'll go over some troubleshooting later. That may indicate that your saltwater level might be wrong. Your cartridge may have failed and may need replaced. Or if you've just refilled the hot tub and the water is cold, this test does not work properly. So it may give you an error then. This right here then is your output level setting. So as we talked about earlier, simply pressing that button is going to increase that. When you get to 10, if you hit it again, it drops down to 0, so you can start through that that pattern again. This number is what determines how much time the salt system spends every day trying to clean your water. So this is your make or break setting. If your water's cloudy, if it smells weird, if you cannot possibly get a chlorine reading, those are all indicative that this number right here simply has not been high enough based on your usage level and or the pre-existing water conditions. So I may need to set that higher. This is that boost function that we talked about earlier. Right now it says it's off. If you press this little white tab here, it'll move up and turn that system on. Now, if this is set at 5 right here, and this is on, the salt system's gonna act like this is set at a 10, even though it's not. It'll do that for 24 hours, and then it'll revert itself back to your normal setting. If I want to change that cartridge and it's not giving me the 4-month reminder, let's say, for example, I'm reading down here in the red, and up here it says the saltwater cartridge needs to be replaced because it's bad, then I'm going to press this button right here. That will take you to that procedure that we just walked through that will shut off the pump and allow you to remove the cartridge and replace it. Following this procedure then will also reset that 4-month timer so that the hot tub is not asking you to replace it prematurely. Now, those of you with the push button control like I have, this is what your control interface looks like. So you'll notice here it does not say salt water on here. There is a little water drop here, but because it's not a touch screen, you can't interact with that. So here's what you and I are going to do. This button right here, one that says options, if you press the options button, this corner of the screen, instead of saying the word clean, will then populate and say Freshwater Salt System. If you press the button beside that, that will then enter that saltwater menu and give you access to the same settings for your salt system that we just went through on the touchscreen. So again, that's options, and then the lower right corner will say saltwater, and then we'll press the button beside the screen there. Now, when we get into that menu, this is what it's going to look like. You've got test status here. If I press this button, it will retest and determine where the health status of that cartridge is. Since we don't have the pretty circle on this one, this right here is that graphical readout. And again, I'm not worried about where this little white line is as long as it's in the green. If we get into the yellow or the red zones, then we may need to do some troubleshooting to determine, does my cartridge need replaced? Is my salt water appropriate? Also real important before I forget to notate that on both the touchscreen and this interface, the graph is not a direct indicator as to my salt level. It is also not telling me what the chlorine level in the hot tub is. It is only telling me the electrical health of that electrode to help us determine if everything is running properly or if we need to start troubleshooting. This up here, this level 2, this is that numerical button. If I press this button here, that will cycle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 10 and then back down to 0 again. So that is going to be how you're going to change the output setting on the touchscreen. So again, to get to this, we're going to hit options, then we're going to hit that salt water in the lower right to get us to this screen so that we can adjust that level setting. Here, if I want to replace that cartridge, once I'm in the salt menu, I'm going to actually press and hold this button right here. If you simply press it, because that procedure would make the pump shut off, it's going to ask you on the screen to press and hold the button down to confirm that you really want to replace that cartridge. So that would be how we would manually replace that cartridge. And again, that'll replace that 4-month timer as well. In the lower left here, this is your boost function. The button next to that will then allow me to engage or disengage the boost. And again, that just sets your level setting to act like it's at a 10 for 24 hours without actually changing the setting that you're at. Down here, then, we have the picture of what the screen looks like when it's giving you the 4-month reminder. Again, if down here it's saying to change your cartridge because it's been 4 months, but up here we're reading into the green and everything's running well, then you don't have to change that cartridge, just hit the later button. Okay, so let's do a couple of troubleshooting tips here. These are kind of the most common things that people will call us about with regard to their saltwater system. So the most common thing is going to be on the outside of your hot tub. All of you guys have a little blue and green LED light that happens to be the hot spring logo. The blue part of the light is your power light, so it's always good that that's on. The green part of that light is your temperature status light. So if that's on solid green, everything's running fine, your hot tub is heated to your temperature. Now, depending on which hot tub you have, if you have the touchscreen control, when the saltwater system wants your attention, the green light will begin to blink. Now, if you hit that 10-day reminder, or you hit the 4-month, it's time to change the cartridge reminder, both of those are going to make that green light flash. So although that might not be an emergency thing, if you see the green light flashing, go open the cover, check the control. The control interface will tell you why the green light is blinking. So it's really easy to determine, is it just want me to check my 10-day? Is it asking me to replace the cartridge? Or in some cases, it may be a different issue, but it'll tell you right on the control. Those of you who have the push button controls, you have an extra light next to the blue and green light that usually is a solid green color. If it turns a solid yellow, that is how the salt system will interact with you. So if that light turns solid yellow, it will mean either it's the 10-day reminder or that 4-month reminder to change your cartridge. In either case, if you complete what it's asking you to do, You go out, do the 10-day reminder, test your water, hit the confirm button. That light will stop blinking and go back to green. In some cases, you may see that the control might tell you that your filter might be dirty or that it's experiencing a low water flow issue. This is a bigger deal because if your filter gets so dirty that the hot tub can't breathe anymore, especially in the winter months, that may stop the hot tub from being able to heat. So again, I always tell people, if you see a status light blinking or a yellow or red light on the hot tub, check it right away. Most of the time, it's just going to be the salt system saying, hey, I want to know how I'm doing. But in the instance that it may be a plugged up filter, that could be a more critical thing in the winter months in particular. So take a peek at that. If it is telling you that your filter's dirty and the light's blinking, take the filter out of the hot tub, go turn the power off at the breaker panel and turn it back on to reset the hot tub, and just leave the filter out, especially if you pull it out and it looks really bad. You can get lotions and body oils and things built up in there, but that'll allow the hot tub to begin heating again. If for any reason you can't figure that out or the hot tub still doesn't want to work right, definitely give us a call and we can troubleshoot over the phone and determine if you have an instance where we may need to send a service technician out. Okay, so most of the time, green blinking light or solid yellow light, usually just going to be a 10-day reminder or the 4-month replacement reminder. So keep an eye on that. Again, on that 10-day reminder, if you ignore it and you go 15 and 20 days, remember that it's going to automatically lower that output setting. And so you may not be getting the sanitation that you need if your bather load has continued to be higher. Cloudy water. So 90 times out of 100, say 90% of the time, when somebody has a cloudy water issue or the water is turned a green color, most of the time it just means that it's not getting enough chlorine and we're starting to get some organic developments in the hot tub. So the first thing we want to do if it's cloudy or icky looking, just dip a test strip in the hot tub. If it's showing no chlorine, that means that our output level in the salt system was probably just too low for whatever period of time. And we may need to actually add some of the bottled chlorine to the hot tub in order to spike our chlorine level, produce a higher level of sanitation to break down those impurities and get the water clear again. And then at that point, we may want to raise that output level setting. Say if we're at a 5, maybe try a 6 and go forward and see if that works a little bit better for you. So again, cloudy water is almost always a symptom of just too little chlorine. If, on the other hand, you put a test strip in and your chlorine level in the test strip is really, really purple, like it's reading super high, that would be an indication that your output setting has been too high for a period of time, and the hot tub is making way more chlorine than you're using. And so at that point, we may temporarily want to put the output at 0. So we stop that chlorine production until that reading on your test strip comes down to a more appropriate level. We can also help you guys test in store. If you bring us a cup of water, we can test and analyze and figure out exactly where that chlorine level is. In some extreme circumstances, we've seen people have their output at 10, or somebody's hitting the boost button every day for whatever reason, and they get an extreme level of chlorine in the hot tub that can not only be very uncomfortable, but that can produce some mechanical issues with the hot tub long term. So like everything else in our lives, moderation is key. A little bit of everything is good in most cases, but too much chlorine is bad. So let's just keep an eye on that.
Why are we advised to keep the old cartridge?
So Bryn was just passing along a question to me. Somebody asked why we're advised to keep the old cartridge. Are they talking about the saltwater cartridge?
I would assume so.
So there really wouldn't be a reason to keep the old freshwater cartridge if in fact it has reached end of life. If that cartridge is dead, there's nothing we're going to do to fix it to make it usable again. They are meant to be disposable. So if you replace a cartridge and you know the old one, you replaced it because it just wasn't working anymore, just go ahead and throw it away. There really is no reason to keep that. Okay, let's talk about phosphates. So one of the biggest hurdles that we find with saltwater-based hot tubs in particular, and this can affect all hot tubs, but it has a really direct impact on the cartridges in saltwater systems, is something that we call phosphates. Um, Now, phosphates can be in our source water naturally. Those of you who get to drink beautiful Montana well water, phosphates can be found in fertilizing compounds, and so they can get into our groundwater from farmland, cattle ranches, etc. We definitely have some of those around here. But most phosphates that we find in people's hot tubs are introduced to the hot tub by the people getting in them. And that's not to say that like, oh, the people are gross or something, but literally the lotions, the makeup, the hair care products, the detergents in our bathing suits that don't rinse out completely. Many of those products can carry phosphates in them. A lot of these products now you'll find marketed that they're phosphate free, but it's always hard to know, especially if you have guests in your hot tub, who's wearing what, whether it's makeup, deodorants, lotions, shampoos and conditioners that didn't rinse out of their hair completely, beard oils, etc. If we can prevent the phosphates from getting into your hot tub, everything goes a lot more smoothly, quite frankly. The big thing with the phosphates, though, is they don't go away or break down once in the hot tub. They really kind of stay there. The reason that they cause problems is really twofold. One, phosphates are a food source for bacteria and algae. So when we get really high phosphate levels, they very much help bacteria and algae grow a lot more rapidly, which in turn means that we end up having to have higher levels of chlorine production. So those with phosphate levels that are elevated in their hot tub may be at a higher output setting, say that they're at an 8 out of 10, for example, than they actually need to be if we had phosphate-free water. The other issue, and this has been the biggest problem we've seen with people who may be experiencing really short lifespans on their saltwater cartridges. Normally they get replaced every 3 to 4 months, but I've had customers that can't get like longer than a month and a half out of them. The phosphates can actually bind to that cartridge and reduce its electrical conductivity, which basically means that cartridge can't work. So when we do water testing here in the store, the computerized testing that we do automatically tests for phosphate levels in your hot tub water. So if you bring us a water sample to help troubleshoot, if you bring us one just because you haven't brought one in a while and you just want to see how you're doing, we will automatically alert you if we're detecting phosphates, especially elevated levels of phosphates in your hot tub. Doesn't take a whole lot of it. Phosphates are measured in parts per billion. Pretty much everything else in the hot tub, we do parts per million. But the higher the levels get, they can be problematic. Now, if you do get phosphates in your water, there's a couple of different ways to get rid of them. One would simply be to drain and refill the hot tub. And in some cases, if you're already having cloudy water issues or that kind of thing, it might simply be easiest to just drain the hot tub, refill it, start from scratch, so that we're not fighting the curve. The other aspect, though, is there are some hot tub and pool chemical products that are designed to filter phosphates out of the water. There's a procedure to do this properly, and we can go over it with people one-on-one if you need to. But essentially, we're going to add a phosphate remover to the water, run the jets for a total of 4 to 6 hours. Then we're going to add a water clarifying agent. What water clarifiers do is basically make things bind to the filter in your hot tub so that we can physically remove the phosphates. After 24 to 48 hours, it's really important then that we actually take those filters out of the hot tub and clean the filters, because if we don't, those phosphates remain in the filters and then actually get back into the water, and your phosphate level doesn't actually get fixed. So there is a procedure for doing that. And again, depending on how extreme a person's phosphate levels are, some cases it may be easier just to drain and refill. Some cases it might be just as simple as adding the remover and getting it filtered out. So again, really important because it uses the filters to get the phosphates out, that we clean those filters. Bear in mind, without the phosphate remover, water clarifier by itself and the filters by themselves won't actually get the phosphates out. So if you are experiencing issues with, I can never generate chlorine at all, my water's constantly getting cloudy, I'm having to add bottled chlorine a lot, my saltwater cartridge won't last more than a month and a half, those are typically signs that we need to look at whether there's a phosphate issue. If you bring us a sample of your source water, we can test that before you even put it in the hot tub and determine whether you even have phosphates in your source water or not. We do find that periodically, but more often than not, the phosphates seem to come off of people. So not a bad idea to rinse your bathing suits, not launder them routinely, because many of those phosphate containing products also are the source of foaming and bubble bath in the hot tub. So if you've got foaming and cloudy water issues, it may be detergents, but it could also be a sign that some of those products may have some phosphate products in them as well. Okay, testing your salt level. So let's say that, going back to those pictures where we had the red, yellow, and green graph on our saltwater control, if it's reading in the low or the high ranges, in some cases it may indicate that our salt level is not right. If our salt levels are appropriate, it creates a certain amount of conductivity for that cartridge. If we have a really low or high salt level, that can throw things out of whack a little bit. Now, the saltwater test strips, all they test for is salt. You will have a bottle of these in your original startup kit. They do expire at some point, but salt is generally something you do not have to test routinely, because unless you drain the hot tub or physically bucket or splash out a ton of water, salt doesn't evaporate and it's not really going to get consumed. So your salt level's not going to go down by itself. So if the hot tub tells you that it has a low status reading on your salt system and it asks you to test your salt or change your cartridge, in that case, you can use these to test and get an idea as to where your salt level is. Bearing in mind, if your salt level was good yesterday, it's still good today, because again, the salt doesn't go anywhere. Hot Spring says that we want our salt levels somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 parts per million. Kind of the perfect number is at 1,750. Here's the reality. This doesn't have to be perfect for the system to work right. The test strips give you a vague idea if you're in the right range. They're not going to give you a precise number. We can do that if you bring us a water sample. But generally speaking, people's salt levels will creep upwards over time because our sweat, body oils, and most of the hot tub chemicals have sodium in them. And so your salt levels tend to creep upwards over time. So just kind of something to keep in mind. Keep in mind also, salt level is not directly proportionate to chlorine levels. So we're testing two separate things. So again, you do not need to routinely test your salt unless we're troubleshooting any type of an issue there. Okay, let's talk about the indicators that might drive us to test the water for salt levels. So this is going to be that touchscreen interface, but you'll have a similar type of a readout on the push button control. It'll just be words instead of graphics. So this particular drawing right here where it says service required, contact dealer, error 5, this is pretty rare. I really doubt any of you are going to run into this. This usually indicates more of a mechanical type issue, a wiring type issue, that sort of thing. What's very common though is this one right here in the middle. And this is where we might want to get those saltwater test strips out. You'll see here it says inactive, meaning the salt system has stopped running. Low status, and you'll notice the graph is pointing into the red here. Usually what this means is that the cartridge has just reached the end of its life and it doesn't work. That could be because the cartridge is aged out. It may be because we have a phosphate issue or a hard water issue, and we're getting mineral buildup on those electrode plates, and so it's not conductive anymore. In this case, though, what we would do is a little bit of troubleshooting. So we'd make sure that we don't have cold water. If you refill your hot tub today, it is going to give you this message until the hot tub gets hot. because the cold water is going to make it fail its test. If your filters are really dirty and so the hot tub can't even get water to flow over that cartridge, that's going to cause that error message. If you've got scale buildup, phosphate buildup on that cartridge, reducing that conductivity, that's going to cause that issue. The test strip idea is to check for low salt levels. If our salt water is too low, for example, I just refilled it yesterday, the water got hot, but I forgot to add the salt to it. Well, we don't really have a saltwater hot tub without salt, do we? So if those test strips are showing that your salt level is way too low, then we may simply need to add extra salt to it to fix that. Now, again, the salt level doesn't disappear. So if this was good yesterday, then it's probably still good today. And so that may mean that it's just time to replace that cartridge, even if it hasn't been 4 months. If the light bulb burns out, you replace the light bulb no matter what. Now, this one here, I've only ever seen one thing cause a high reading. So when we're really high in the red here and the system says it's inactive, I've never seen this happen unless somebody had too much salt in the water. And the reason that this can be an issue is if our salt levels are really high, the higher the salt concentration, the more effectively the cartridge makes chlorine. And the problem would be if we get above a certain point, it may uncontrollably generate chlorine to a point which we have constant high levels of chlorine in the hot tub. And so we don't want to do that. Now, the solution for that is actually pretty simple. If you get too much salt in there, we can test the salt, find out what you're at, and then we just drain some of the water out and then dilute what's left in the hot tub. So this one's pretty simple to fix in most cases. I think we talked about this one ad nauseum earlier, but the output setting here, again, every 10 days it's going to ask you to check it. If you go 15 and 20 days later, it's going to change your output for you automatically. I think I said after 15 days it goes to 2 earlier. I think I misspoke. It looks like that's 3. So just know that if you come out and that output setting's at a 1 or a 3, but yet it's set earlier, just remember that's just that 10-day timer sequence. This is what those error messages look like on the push button control interface. Same exact stuff, just a different interface. You'll see here the low reading is in the red on the left and the high reading is on the right. Same exact troubleshooting steps, same causes, just a different interface. Okay. I almost should launch a new poll now just to see what people think. Which filter would you rather have in your hot tub? This really, really brown one or the nice clean white one? So let's talk about filter care. The filters in your hot tub are active every time you turn the jets on. One of the filters is active 24 hours a day with that silent little circulating pump that's in your hot tub. And so even if the hot tub's not being used for a week, let's say, that filter is still picking up particulate from the water. Generally, the cleaner you keep your water, the cleaner the filter stays. If we prevent lotions and sunscreens and things like that from getting into the hot tub, that can make a really big difference in helping to keep the filters clean. In a perfect world, though, we'd recommend that you pull the filters out of the hot tub, let's say once a month, rinse them out with the garden hose or the shower head sprayer, whatever you can get some decent pressure from, just to rinse out any bugs or body hair or particulate that may be attached to the filters. Every 3 to 4 months, then, we would recommend that you actually take the filters and either spray them or soak them in a solution of filter cleaner. Now, there's different brands of it. The Spa Guard brand that we sell, they literally call it filter cleaner, so it's real easy. This is going to break down minerals and lotions and body oils that may not rinse out of the filters so that we can keep those filters free so that water can flow, the hot tub can heat effectively, salt system can work effectively. If maintained well, most people get anywhere from 1 to 3 years life out of a set of filters. Your filters in your hot tub are identical, so they can be rotated around to kind of distribute that workload a little more evenly. You'll find that one filter in particular, the same one where that silver gray cartridge goes inside of, that filter is the one that's running 24/7. So that'll always be the dirtiest of them. That's also what feeds your heater. So if that one gets too plugged up, then the hot tub may stop heating. If you see your filters are beginning to change shape, they're cracking, they're warping, the fabric pleats in the filter are starting to get irregular shape, or they're bunching up in groups and having big gaps, those are signs that it's time to replace that filter. Okay, how are we doing with questions there, Bryn? Good. All right, so let's talk about the water chemistry aspect. This is where we're going to talk about pH, the alkalinity, water hardness. Every water class we've ever done, it seems like this is where the majority of questions typically come from. If you're taking notes, pH, really, we want to read somewhere between 7.2 and 7.6. Again, in a saltwater hot tub, this is almost always going to be drifting upwards, so it's important to keep track on that once a week. Our total alkalinity hot spring recommends between 80 and 120 parts per million. This usually, when we fill a hot tub around here, starts much higher than this. And because this, to a large extent, controls the pH, getting this right is often more difficult than the pH initially when you first fill a hot tub. It might take you a few days. And then calcium hardness, this is literally just how hard your water is. We want it below 75 parts per million. If we were down at 20, I'd be happy. The key is just we have to get below 75 to prevent scale buildup on the saltwater cartridge. This little picture in the lower right is a kind of an old school hot tub heater. You'll see these little white loops here. Those are not supposed to be white. Those are actually supposed to be kind of a dark gray, black color. Those are the heating elements. That white buildup is that scale formation that can accumulate as we heat hot water. So that's what we want to try to prevent in your hot tub. Mentioned this already. I'm not going to hound on it. When your salt system's working, the pH level is going to constantly go up. Again, it's a good sign because you know that your system is working. The bottles look slightly different than this. I need to update this picture, but the brand of chemicals we sell, they pretty clearly label pH increaser, raises pH, pH decreaser, lowers pH. I will point out, even on the new bottle design, the pH increaser and decreaser bottles look exactly the same, with exception of the first two letters of the words here. So when you come in to buy some, just be cognizant of which bottle you actually pick up off the shelf, because even we grab the wrong one sometimes. Important to know, though, that your pH level is affected by pretty much everything. People using the tub, all the chemicals you add, the aeration caused by jets. If you add water to the hot tub, I mean, really everything you do to that hot tub is going to have some impact on that. So why is pH important? So if we have really acidic water, if our pH is really low, we have a tendency that the water will still be clear. So that's not always going to show itself right away. However, real low pH is where we start having corrosion issues on metals. For instance, heating elements in hot tubs can break down some of the plastics on jets and things. It makes chlorine more hyperactive. So chlorine actually breaks down too quickly and therefore becomes less effective. So you actually need more chlorine. And this is where we get the greatest level of complaint about itchy skin or eye irritation, is when the water is really low pH. On the flip side, if our pH is too high, we're more likely to get cloudy water. This is when we're going to get scale buildup. So any minerals or hardness in the water tend to come out of the water as the pH gets higher. Chlorine becomes more sluggish, and therefore we actually need more of it. And you tend to get more dry skin from hot tubbing when pH is really high. So again, the better we balance pH, the more comfortable it's going to be, the longer the hot tub's going to last, and the less chlorine you need, which all of us want. Now, part of how we control the pH is through total alkalinity. Now, those of you who may or may not remember water chemistry classes from long ago, pH and alkalinity are the same thing. However, total alkalinity is a separate measurement of certain compounds in the water that help to stabilize pH. And that's what we're looking at trying to adjust. If we have too much total alkalinity in the water and it's high, it makes it very difficult to get pH to change. pH tends to stay really high. We end up having to add pH decreaser over and over and over again to get that down. On the flip side, if we get too little or no alkalinity, total alkalinity content, then the pH becomes really erratic. It can bounce up and down day to day. We have a tendency for pH to get really low, and really low total alkalinity and pH. Again, that's where I get most of my complaints about skin irritations, and that's where we see nowadays most of our issues mechanically with hot tubs, as it breaks down seals and things like that in equipment. Water hardness, we've touched on this a couple of times. Again, really important that we get that water properly softened when you fill the hot tub, whether that come from a water softener in the house, using the portable on-the-go softener, or in a pinch using the Vanishing Act, the little beanbag pillows. Now, every salt system, when we deliver it, comes with one of those Vanishing Act in a little white box. My goal would be that you never have to use it, but if you do, we can go over instructions on how to place it, how to make it work properly. Okay, let's talk about this portable softener because a lot of our customers have purchased this. It's an extremely convenient way to soften your water and a lot more effective than the little Vanishing Act bean bags are. This is great because you can pick it up and carry it. It comes with a little 3-foot length of hose. So you can attach your garden hose to your hose spigot, run the other hose out of this into the hot tub. The biggest question people end up having with this is how to actually recharge it. When you get it brand new out of the box, it's already charged, it's already ready to go. You can just use it immediately to soften water going into your hot tub. Periodically though, it is important that we actually go through the recharge procedure on this. Because it can only absorb so much hardness from the water before it stops doing so. There's 2 ways to go about determining when that needs to be done. I usually recommend, if you're refilling the hot tub from scratch, to recharge this before you even start so that it starts with a full charge and we don't have to worry about it failing partially through your refill. You can then use it to top off after each refill, and most people are fine to just add, a few gallons here or there. However, as the water is coming out of this, you can actually take your test strips, your regular chlorine pH test strips. They have a hardness indicator on them. And as the water is flowing out of the softener, literally just put the test strip in that flow of water, and it'll tell you whether that water is soft or hard, and you can determine if you need to recharge it. Now, those of you guys with really, really high hardness levels in your water, I have some customers that may have to stop filling the hot tub halfway through, recharge the softener, and then begin filling up again if the softener cannot do all, say, 360 gallons or whatever your hot tub holds. Let me see if I believe I've got, there you go. So this is the procedure on how to recharge the softener. Depending on how hard your water is, and this varies a lot, it could do 800 gallons of water, it could do 320 gallons. I don't get as many people in the 800 gallon range because our water tends to be pretty hard. Again, I like to refill or recharge the softener every time I'm about to refill the hot tub to be safe. Recharging, simply go and buy a standard 26-ounce bottle of table salt. That's all it needs to be. Unscrew the top cap on the softener. Really important that when you unscrew this cap that you do not tip the bottle over. The resin inside of this that does the softening looks like really tiny fish eggs. If you tip it over, that stuff dumps out, and that's basically the battery for the softener, and it is really hard to get all those little eggs back in there. Unscrew the cap, pour the 26-ounce bottle of salt in there, and then we're going to turn the water flow on just barely. If you can see this picture here, you'll see that the water is dribbling out just far enough that it's not running down the side of the bottle. We want just a little bit of flow, and we want to run that for 12 minutes. After about 12 minutes, put a test strip in that flow of water. And if the test strip says the water's nice and soft, you're done. You can now refill your hot tub using that softener. During that recharge process, though, if you put a test strip in here, your hardness reading is going to come out off the charts on your test strip, because while it's recharging with that salt in there, all it's doing is shedding all of the hardness that has been captured in there previously. So really, really important that when you pour the salt in there, that you don't run the water right into your hot tub, or you'll end up with really hard water in your hot tub. Once you're done recharging it, obviously just screw that cap back on. Leaving the cap on, if you tip the bottle over and drain as much water out of it as you can, and then put that bottle in your house somewhere where it's not going to freeze, because if any water freezes inside of it, it'll break the internal components, and all those little fish eggs I was talking about will come out of your garden hose into your hot tub. And when I tell you that there's thousands of them in there and they're tiny, it will take you forever to get them out of your hot tub. So don't let that thing freeze. If you need one-on-one on how to recharge these at some point, you can certainly call us or stop in. We can chat about that. This is a really fun picture I love to show people. This is what real hot tub foaming looks like. Really soft water, like in saltwater systems and hot tubs, is easier to get foamy than hard water is. So for those of us with saltwater hot tubs, super important that we either ditch the bathing suits entirely if we're able to. If we can't, have everybody in the household pick their hot tub swimsuit, dedicate it to the hot tub. If you need to rinse it periodically, do, but really try not to launder them. If those detergents don't come out all the way in the wash, they will come out in the hot tub. Although that usually doesn't create this much foam, this is what it looks like when somebody dumps a bottle of filter cleaner in their hot tub. The filter cleaner, or if you don't get the filter cleaner rinsed out of your filters completely, it gets foamy really, really bad. So to avoid this little winter wonderland happening with this hot tub in your backyard, rinse, rinse, rinse filters in bathing suits. Let's talk about hot tub covers. So there's a bunch of you guys who shared that you've owned multiple hot tubs before. So a lot of you folks know that hot tub covers are expensive. Although we're happy to sell you one when you need one, we don't really want to sell you one unless you need one. So to get the longest life possible out of these, this time of year, don't use your snow shovel to get the snow off, even if it's plastic and doesn't have the metal blade on it. Snow shovels tend to nick and tear the covers over time. Once that vinyl tears, you can put vinyl patches on if you want, but as we break the plastic seal underneath that vinyl, all covers will break down over time, absorb moisture, and get really heavy. That moisture content reduces their insulating value, makes them heavier, which can put strain on your cover lifter and your back. And so we want to avoid that as long as we can. Most hot tub covers see about a 4 to 5 year lifespan on average. In some of the higher elevation areas like Big Sky, where we tend to have more snow weight on the covers more frequently, we see 3 and 4 year average lifespans up there. Hot tub covers can run $500 to $600 a piece. So if you have a soft broom, or we sell, because we love them, we use them, a product called a snow broom. These are great. They're a foam brick with a 4-foot handle on them that you can use to brush snow off the paint of your car without scratching your paint. And so it won't hurt our hot tub covers either. That's what we use. In the summer and even in the winter, because we get a lot of UV here, using the 303 vinyl protectant is our favorite choice to help condition the vinyl from drying out, rotting, and cracking as badly. That can help quite a bit. If you're in an area that gets really windy, say Ennis, Three Forks, Livingston, the Paradise Valley area, consider whether you need to get wind straps for your hot tub. These buckles built into the covers work well in Bozeman and some places where we don't routinely get high winds. But if you're in a place that is really windy, we have seen covers disappear. We get some pretty good strong winds here in Montana in some places. If you have a cover lifter mounted and the wind throws your cover off, that can not only damage your cover, but that cover lifter. And in turn, if it rips the lifter off the hot tub, can damage siding on the hot tub too. Those of you who are windy areas know you are. So if you need to chat with us independently, we can do that. When the cover gets really heavy, just replace it. We don't want you guys to not use your hot tub because it takes 3 men and a baby to get the lid off the hot tub. I don't want you to throw your back out after soaking in the hot tub and getting pain relief. None of that's good. So a couple tips on hot tub covers there. We've covered a ton of stuff in the video format. I know it's a little more difficult for people to just raise their hand and ask a question. Hopefully Bryn has been able to keep up with all of your guys' questions one-on-one. You're certainly welcome to reach out to us, email us with more questions. But I want to leave you with this. Realistically, the most important test of the water in your saltwater hot tub, in my opinion, is this right here. If it looks good, feels good, and smells good, it probably is good. If it doesn't look great, it's off color and cloudy. If it smells bad, if it's irritating your skin, whether it's dry, itchy, or red bumps or things like that, those are all signs that something's wrong. We want you in that point to call us, come in, bring us a water sample in particular, help us test the water for you to help get you on the right path so that you can soak. I'm going to leave things running here for a second in case people have more questions. Feel free to send them in the chat box, and Brent and I can answer a couple questions here for a few minutes. Those of you who need to get back to real life, thank you guys for coming and attending the class. We hope you found it useful. This is our first time doing it by video, so a little bit different format. We normally have a classroom space here at Mountain Hot Tub that we do these classes at, so hopefully this worked for you guys. Without further ado there, any questions there from the group, Bryn?
A few questions. Here, how to do this one, so that there is occasionally we get tiny dark particles in the bottom of the hot tub. Best way to remove those?
Yeah. So one question Bryn just brought up is people getting tiny dark particles in the bottom of the hot tub occasionally. It's actually pretty common that people will track things on the bottom of their feet, little sand particles or dirt particles and things like that. We sell a product called a spa vac that is designed specifically to siphon little sticks, small leaves, grit, and sand out of the bottom of the hot tub without having to remove water from the hot tub. I think they run about $49.99. We sell a lot of them. They're super easy to use. But any of those, dirt and sand particles, other organic stuff, leaves and sticks that get into the hot tub, that stuff carries other organisms with it and can increase the amount of chlorine that we need to keep your hot tub clean. Not to mention if you're walking across from one seat to another in the hot tub and there's sand under your feet, it just isn't comfortable. So if you need some help getting grit out of the bottom of the tub, we have a couple different products to do that. The grit getter is one of them. What do the grit getters run? Are they $35, I think? It's a little handheld squeezy thing that you can suck up grit off the seats in the bottom of the hot tub. We love the grit getter in part just because the gentleman who designed and patented that product is one of our customers here in the Bozeman area. In fact, he's since sold it off and somebody else produces the product now. But to sell a product that works well that was originally made here in Bozeman is just kind of a cool thing. So what other questions, Bryn?
We can just go over that. It's video will be posted somewhere.
Oh, yes. We've had a couple questions on whether we're going to have a video of this available. We have been recording this, so the plan is that we will be posting a copy of this. I got to figure out kind of exactly where we're going to do that. It may end up on our Facebook page. We may find a place on our website, may end up going on our YouTube. It might be all three, but we will be figuring out how to get a copy of that posted online so you can rewatch if needed. What else, Bryn? That it?
Oh, is there a product you can add to water for dry skin?
Oh yeah, dry skin. Can we add something to the water to help that? So for a lot of people, the saltwater system kind of resolves that. However, there are a couple of things that we can do that do tend to help, especially for those who have more sensitive skin. We sell a product called Silk Balance. It is an additive you can add to condition the water to, in a sense, kind of create a barrier, if you will, between the water and your skin. It was developed originally for people that have eczema and psoriasis, who can't normally use a hot tub because of how drying the water is. It's a very unique product in the way it works. There's a lot of products out there that sort of try to mimic what it does. But because it works so well, it's not the cheapest product out there. Depending on the size of the bottle, they're $100 for the small bottle, $200 for the large one. Depending on the size of your hot tub, you might need 2 or 3 bottles in a year. So for those of you who just can't get away from the dry skin issue, come talk to us one-on-one, and we can kind of go over details and kind of discuss if that might be something you want to try on top of doing the saltwater approach. So any other questions?
Do I need to add chlorine sanitizer?
So the question was, do I need to add chlorine sanitizer once a year or once a year? Goodness, once a week, you said? So the owner's manual for the salt system, Hot Spring recommends to shock the hot tub once a month. In my experience, those who are diligent at controlling that output setting number don't necessarily have to do that, which is part of why we didn't cover that in the class. Adding the bottled chlorine, in our experience, is kind of an as-needed type of thing. I have managed with my hot tub to go a year and 2 weeks at my longest between chlorine doses. Now, everybody's mileage is going to vary a little bit. I do hot tubs for a living, so I have a little advantage. But it is definitely possible to go extended periods without having to add chlorine if you keep on top of adjusting that output setting. So no routine need, but if you do get behind, if your output's set too low and the water gets a little cloudy, it's not uncommon to need to add chlorine at that point. Next question was how to get rid of foam once it appears. Depending on what's causing the foam, most cases it's detergents and things that are making it really foamy. We actually sell a product called anti-foam that you can add to the water that will knock the bubble bath down. However, if you get enough detergents, let's say built up in the water, that are creating that foam, those detergents don't completely go away. And so in some cases, we may want to just drain and refill the hot tub and start from scratch to completely eliminate that problem. But the anti-foam works in a lot of cases. So if you need some anti-foam, come and see us. It is probably the most instant gratification product that we sell. You can turn the jets on, the foam builds up, you squirt the anti-foam in, and the foam disappears right in front of you. So I'm going to have Bryn look, see if there's any more questions that are unanswered. I want to throw out there, if for some reason you've watched this class and you're still hanging in there going, I still don't get it, what the heck do I do? Maybe I need to refill my hot tub, but the weather outside is frightful. We have a valet department within our service team, several gentlemen that work, 6 days a week. And all they do is what we call valets. If you want to hire a pool boy, so to speak, for your hot tub, even if it's just one time, hey, I want somebody to come out and meet with me and kind of in person help me figure out what I'm doing. I want to have somebody drain and clean the hot tub for me because it's 20 degrees outside and I just don't feel like doing it. We've got several staff members that's all they do. So if you need extra help with any of that, we have a lot of customers that have us come out routinely, once a month, every other week. Some customers even once a week, just to test and balance and adjust settings for them so that they can be hands-free. So valet services are available if you're interested. What other questions?
And this is going to be our last question. My test strip always reads low to no chlorine. Should I adjust the output number or just add chlorine? And then the other question is water looks good, smells good, but no chlorine shows up.
Okay. So last question, and this is actually a pretty good one. So the question is, my water looks good, feels good, and smells good, but I never have a chlorine reading on my test strips. in my mind, that is almost kind of perfection. Now, again, it's a little bit of a tightrope walk if your usage pattern is sporadic. But the way I operate my hot tub, even when I do the computerized water test in house that gives us exact numbers, my free chlorine level in my hot tub reads at like 0.2 or 0.3 parts per million, which on a test strip reads as 0. My goal would be to get each of you guys confident enough and diligent in changing that output number setting so that you have water that looks good, feels good, smells good all the time without a constant chlorine reading. So if you're not getting a chlorine reading in your test strip, that by itself doesn't bother me as long as the water is staying great. If, however, you're having issues with it being cloudy or it doesn't look good all the time or doesn't smell good all the time, and you got a 0 chlorine reading, then we probably need to add chlorine to it and raise that output setting. But if everything is staying fantastic, yet the test strip says 0, I'm not so much worried about that. If you want a residual chlorine level to be extra cautious, you certainly can simply bump that output level setting up, because if you set it high enough, you can start producing more chlorine than you're using. And that's really how we end up with kind of a constant chlorine level on the test strip, is essentially making more chlorine than we're using. So we're going to wrap up because it's 11:30. It's been about an hour and a half. If any of you guys have questions, feel free to email us.